Tatanda Untanam Jindala, Cerdo, Leu Nga Yepenane, Leu on the Sena, Leu Ngaba, Takore, Choga, Tanda, thank you, Domjo on the Sena, Dumba, Tipa Chimbo, Mixal to Tempe Caprella, Tipa Chimbo, Mixal to Tempe Cap Tela, Tazo, Cario, the Sena, Tene Tombo, Changeable Tela, Tene Tanda. Tikpa lana meba, drupa lana meba ta, tene mipa lana meba ta, yongda drupa lana meba te, ta somji go ne, tipa chimbo te, chepar tumpa pe junsin tempare. Ti na ne, ta terenke kasu shaya te, drupa lana meba re. Drupa lana meba te la ya, ta tenchu kongri ke damji ondo se na, tambe drupa tong, yiji drupa tong, tene ji suntumbe chu drupa tong, Nani bomba drubaton, cheparton, druba trupson you are la. Tinane, druba tambo, tambe drubate, takasinke castle, Husumbarella, Terin, Yilla Sipe druba, la, Nipare.
In this treatise of the differentiating the middle from extremes, there are 5 chapters, and so we are on the 5th chapter. And then, if we actually think about it in terms of the summary, that is the first verse of the entire treatise, then we are on the 7th of the 7 points. And this is the special features of the Mahayana. So what makes the Mahayana superior? And so here in this we have the unsurpassability of this. As covered in the overview, it's said to have 3 different aspects: the practice, the focus, and the true accomplishment. And so of these 3, we're currently talking about the first of them, which is the practice. And so for the practice, as we discussed yesterday, there are 6 aspects of the practice as well. The practices, there's the exalted practice, the practice of attention, the practice of the compatible factors, the practice of abandoning extremes, and the specific practice, and the general practice. And so these are the 6 different practices. And so yesterday we discussed the first of these, which is the exalted practice. And so today we are on the second, which is the practice of the attention.
Da yilla sipe druba telaya, cerdo, tene, tanda, hirap somji yilla sipe ke chol, ta tipa chimbi chu tenzo yilla kandi chiku ke yaware se na, tene, hirap somji yilla sipe ke chol, to chuche choyi go ni yilla sipe ke chol, ni yepe na ne, tangbo hirap somji yilla sipe chol re la, ta teya, tsawe tseke onda se na, Tikpa chimbo chetabur chu nam taparan se pato, chongchu sempa taparan hirap samji yisi pa ho se. Ta tige tanda yila sepi ke tsulte, ta tupi hiraton, sombi hiraton, gombi hiraton samji, tene nyamli nangi yore, tikpa chimbo ke chu te, tene ta chu te kanga, chongchu sempa namji, tu taparan yung hirap samji, tene nyam go ne yela sege yore ta tela go pa tong junsin tong chi de song yore la tene ta te ta tangbo thu pa si go bi junsin kan de re ta te thu pa se pa la tene pento kan de yung yore tene ni pa tene sombi khira je la chi pa la tene sele kan de yung yore tene sumba gambi khira de je la chi pe ke tan te la pento khande yungi yobati tembarela ta chitang ngarancho tipa chimbu chu nyansalen bala zo kari go yore sena tu song gansong de pe kalchembore tene tupa chomba gendigi yo mare somba chamba gendigi yo mare gamba chamba gendigi yo mare tene ta tel tu song gansong go yore tupa sena tene ta tanda chitang namba ninda bo yore la Gonza jipelama, ta ma sanji chamdin deni zangde tene menga ke jipa yepa tenzo lama cheki khalne lama cheki ni to jete chunge menga tenzo rangi ni te ta tanda tu ne ta chu ge ne lung da bote yapo hipa te la tu pi hera te tupi hera nimba de dehi kai lama sunga yuarela dehi kai lama sunga de la sanji jamden de ji sumbu do tene ta tanda jinju ke papende da chepar jinam ji tombe thank you to dango chepar jinam bu yuarela tene tenzo la ta na tene ta pesha te troame be hini tene kon kande che yona ya 다 perna 다 공사가 라마지 있나 드니 대갑가라 두세 이해받아 갑가라 두세 매반다고 용그래데 대기가 일라말라 드니 두세 이해받아 매바 드니 가 제버려 말에 나랑라 두세 이어나 배사됐다 나랑라 두세 매나 거봐 요 요난 되게 요알라 드니 대 배사대 초 컨트롤 비히니 제버던 봐봐 인송알라 드니 대답게 뎁텐조 다 딘디지니 때라 투바체 버킹 pen yung yore
So the practice of attention is taught primarily through the attention on the three types of intelligence, or the three types of prajna. And so how is it that this attention, the attention of the practice of the Mahayana, is taught? It's taught through the methods of the focusing attention on the three intelligence and also on the 10 Dharma activities. And so these are the primary ways of focusing the attention. And so first it discusses how to focus the attention through the three intelligence. As in verse 8, the bodhisattvas always focus their attention through the three intelligences on the way phenomena are designated in the Mahayana. And so here, the way that the bodhisattvas focus their attention is through the practices of developing the intelligence of listening, developing the intelligence of contemplating, and developing the intelligence of meditating. And so for all the practices that we do, the bodhisattvas always focus their attention through these three different types of intelligence. And there are reasons and benefits, or purposes and reasons for do this. So what is the reason for engaging in listening? What is the benefit of engaging in listening? And then with the second of contemplating, when we develop the wisdom of or the intelligence of contemplation within our beings, what does that function? How does that function? And then what is the purpose of developing the intelligence of meditation within ourselves? And so these are three all then taught. Basically, in any practice that we do, any Dharma practice we do in the Mahayana, the intelligence of listening, contemplation, and meditation is extremely important. So it's not just enough to do only listening, or you might think maybe it's okay just to do only listening, or maybe it's okay just to do only contemplation, or maybe it's just okay only to do meditation. But it's not, actually. We need to have all three of them together. We need to have the listening, contemplating, and meditating, all three together. Now, actually, when we listen to things, there are two different ways that we can listen. We can listen to, first of all, the teachings from the individual Lama of the lineage. And so when we talk about the individual Lama of the lineage, what this means are the Lamas who are in the lineage from the Buddha all the way down to our own root Lama. And so this has been a lineage where where the words have gone from the mouth of one Lama into the ear of his disciple. And so this way they've been passed down from generation to generation. And so that we can listen to these. And then when we listen to these instructions, then we come to an understanding and a comprehension of them that will really help our practice. And so that is developing the intelligence of listening. So we need to understand the meaning well. Now, the second type of Lama that we can listen from is the word Lama of the Sugatas. So the word Lama of the Sugatas means the sutras spoken by the Buddha, and also all the treatises and instructions given by the great masters and meditators who followed him. And this word Lama of the Sugata, the books and texts that we can read, this is called the Lama who never gets angry. Because with an individual Lama, sometimes they've got time for you, and sometimes they don't. So the word Lama of the Sugata always has time. Whether, there's no question of having time or having not, they're always there. You can pick up the book and you can read it when you want to, and you can put it aside when you don't have time. And it never gets angry at you. And so in this way, this is the best of all sorts of lamas. And so reading and studying in this way is a really extremely helpful way to develop the intelligence of listening.
tene certo namba sanji bi chue da de na ne misal to so do je te bi chue de sarta warela ni ti kapsala namba sanji bi de pecha tenzo pe kambore re te yinna ya ta tin sang ka kapsala tene lozawa mambo chen lozawa tenzu ke losam tene lozawa tenzu ke kachi tene lozawa tenzu ke niru la tene tenju mambo jor ta tende na tenju ton do la sopa mambo jor na ta tende na yo arela tene te ta tin dreven da bote kari rese na ngaran su tambe chu ji gola shupe loma chu ke tene kalwa sa bu chu arela tene te kangan dan jojo ta jojo nda bota tende chu arela tene te kalwa sa bu chu arela kalwa sa bu te peje ya bo tang ne tene labjon na na pe pentu ton gupa chimbo ta kamdariya hirap samji hila sepa wo sungde tela tupi hirap gi hila si gupi gi junsin rabota tinde sungre.
When I first came to the West in 1979, the Dharma, and in particular the secret mantra Vajrayana, were really quite new. And so there really weren't any Buddhist books around. There were very few books or anything that were available. But nowadays, there have been a lot of translators, and the translators with their real pure intentions, with their great dedication, with their hard work, have translated many different books, many different treatises. They've also translated many different sutras. And so what is the fruit of this? The result of all of this is that we all can study very, very easily. We have the great fortune to be able to study. All of these books are waiting there, are ready and waiting for us to read them and waiting for us to study them. And so we're really extremely fortunate, and we need to use that fortune very well. And put that fortune to good use by actually getting the books and studying them, and this will be very beneficial. It's very necessary as well. And so in general, as the Bodhisattvas always focus their intelligence on the their attention through the three intelligences, here we're using our attention on developing the intelligence of listening. And so this is how we develop the intelligence of listening.
Tene lozawa jankin tenzo pe kule kabo chong yore kawa mambo chi yore te yina yin tin rebu te ta tanda tambi chuyo la long jankin tenzo la pentu jaa chenpo chong yore la pe te yendo tanda ngaranzo peki getayin la yubi ge sanji ge ndo ji tene ta tenzo tene chitang ge tanda jana la tarwege tipa chimbuge ten kadang tenchu tene te yendo tanda terawada la tarwege tipa chimbu nyentu ge kadang tenchu chitang mambu yore te di nani punsam tsopa yonsu zopan rabo te solo chung yore se na tene peche kadang tenchu chung yore la tene teacher na tene ta tingsang lozawa chitang mambu yore de yin yang dang yore be sin dang yo mare tene teacher na ta tanda mambu la ni dop ji tende yo na pege jang peje ka dang tenju tenzo la jang tene no chu pege ge tene jor nang thup na pe mambu la mrab la pento chimbo ndoge zawanda botende yoarela tene te chenamba kanga tende ge nitop chin tenju ge mahompa la yo te yendo nitop chi ne tene Drupnaruchi, Shujute, Pe, Kalchimboga, Dula. Tinite, Cerdo, Tanda, Peg, Kanju Rinpoche. Tinite, Tenjur, Jagarajin Kedu Tonji, Kepaton, Tutuchimbo, Jechusaji, Samgopik, thank you. Tejendo, Pelayan, Lama Cheperchin, Potmeba, Mambo Chambarella, Chulu, Rimig, Lama Chambarella, Lama Tenzuge, Tene, Tati Kapla, Tene, Donga Tenzo, Chodi Nang, Sardo Tsam, Tene Nang Yorella, Tene Te, Kangichedola Tsam Nang Resena, Tati Kapsula, Tenchu Chimboji Tsam Na, Donga Mamboji Tsam Na, Tige, Yombab Dabu, Chimboji Yunguru Revesena, Kaya Yungu Marilla. Tene Kon Ambega Tuki, the Karirisena, Maobala, Roma Tenzula, Samgijilla, Paint to Sona Gone, Tene Pe Kawachi Ninzepare, La, Ten Kawachi Pecapsul Lion, Tatinzana King, Tenipe, Tanda, Tene computer name Choshon Rabu, Tende Kaya Yomare, Tenin Zugni Partala, New Tituji Kurne, Tini. Tini pot zogu patatin de kawachi na yorella. Ti kawachi pati sucher do cheparesena, Durja Loma Tsugi Nyomling getain da che pain to na gone, Tutsewa Chimbu gone, te kawachi na re. Ti kawachi pa nanging marab mambo la pain to yorella. Tini tandaya tetabo, Nane Kadang, Tenchu, Donga, Tenzo, Mahompa la Jurtut na pe, Pento Chimbu yung yore.
Now I have a request for all of you. And so, right now, there have been a lot of people who have gone to learn how to become translators. They've gone to studies, they've gone through a lot of hardships to do this. But the results of what they have done is really something that is extremely helpful for the Dharma. And similarly, in Tibetan, we have all of the sutras and all of the tantras. Now, generally, of course, there are all the scriptures. There are the Chinese scriptures, which include all of the sutras and treatises of the Mahayana, and there are the Theravada scriptures that include the sutras and the treatises from the Theravada and tradition. But among all of the different traditions of Dharma that there are, which one is the most complete? It is the Tibetan that is the most complete in terms of the words of the Buddha and in terms of the treatises. And so, for that reason, we need translators. Now, we do have translators, but do we have enough? We don't. There are not enough translators. And so, in the future, if any of you should develop the courage to be able to do this, and are able to study the words of the Buddha and to study the treatises, then it would be extremely helpful. You may have to go through some difficulties now, but this is something that in the future would bring benefit from generation to generation to generation. It's like the root for all that benefit to happen. And so if you are able to do this and learn Tibetan, learn to become a translator, then in the future this will be extremely beneficial, and it will really help the activity of the Buddha spread and flourish. This is really critical. In Tibetan, we have the Kanjur, all of the words of the Buddha. We have the Tenjur, which is all of the treatises and instructions given by the great masters of the great masters and the 84 Mahasuttas and so forth. And we also have many works written by wonderful Tibetan lamas who taught the Dharma. And these are the works of all of the different lineages. And so now when we have these lamas and they wrote them, when they wrote them, the reason, what was the reason that they actually went to all the effort to write down their treatises? Well, when they wrote the treatises and the instructions, how was it helpful in the future? Well, was it something that was, they wrote it because they had the resolve to be able to do it and the courage to be able to do it, thinking that it would help people, really help people in their minds. And so they went through these great difficulties in order to do it. And this was not like the situation it is today. Today, all you have to do is press a few buttons on a computer. And back in those days, you had to get your paper, you had to get the pen, you had to file down the point, and you had to write, and then the pen would run out by the time you got to the end of the treatise. And it was really extremely difficult to do that. So they went through all of these difficulties. And what was the reason they did this? They did this, they went through all these difficulties in order to help their students have good practice. And so in this way, they did this out of their great kindness and affection for all of their students. And this is something that has been helpful for generation upon generation upon generation. And so in that way, if in the future you can learn to become a translator and translate these works, it will be extremely helpful.
Tene ta tejendo tep tenzola zituna tene tep tenzola chitang tep palba na yima yimpa tene chitang tep palba yina ta jer nekap ke pemba zom tengrela tene tanda tombe chu ke tep tenzo ke tene ngaran so lomzang bo thinking ke gewi ni chepar tum papa yim picherna tene tep Juma Jay Yena, Wool Dana Chaprio Mare, Yabla Yana Chaprio Mare, Tombi Chug, Tenzola Jay Muni, Tarbaton Tomji Jim, Lam Tanking Yen, Somne, Tinite, Hesatum, Kupan of Manga, Be Kalchambo, Tatas is hard to show in.
Now also the books that we have, all of our Dharma books actually, these are not ordinary, normal sorts of books. If they're ordinary sorts of books, they bring you some sort of a short-term benefit. But the Dharma books bring you the benefit of taking you down the good path to the ultimate results. They're the superior spiritual friend. And so for that reason, if it's an ordinary book, if you throw it on the floor and sit on it or step on it or something, it's not much of a big deal. But if it's a Dharma book, it is. If with the Dharma books, they're what show us the path to the ultimate result. And so we should always place them in a high place and pay them respects.
Tene ta te yendo ta tanda te tuparila ta chitang lama number ye de hikai lama konza jipe lama tene tanda noa dai lama tendang chuni je lama som ye som yuare de inaya tendang chuni je lama to noa dai lama ni de ta tanda nega yola la gupa chim te zom sheve china tanda hyoge mela ta tanda hyoya de hikai lama yuare Dehi ka ilama ta te tenzo ta teni chitang ka tupa nang go gare la tupa nang ne tupa zom ji ya ba ma yin pa ta te la ta ji yang ni yang de si ne teni ta te la som bi hera hyo gi wa la ta ji si ne teni te ngu ni tang ni pen tong kin ji rin do ga kan ri rin do teni ya bu ji ri bi ta hin ji ne teni ngarang ga san ji tan la ngi hi che par chin ji tu ba ji na ju te la som bi hera Tene tati tupa tong samba ni jangba ma yin par tene ngone sanje tang la gomne ta penna gomba kapsala yidam jala jerem gomya iware te gendo chaja chimbi tingen zen gomya iware te gendo hini ji tingen zen gomya iware te gendo lojong ge menga ge tingen zen la so pa gomya iware la tenzo gomne nyamso long na tene rang ge san la njurwa te ne tene pangza nyamon ba tama tenzo remji hya Tela tene, yen ten ton yehi ten zo yene, tene tarba tong tam chin chen pe kompong taba yin pe cherna, tu song gong song la, zang gu ge yaware la, ta te hirap sam ji la sepa wo song yin sari.
And so now this is what this is in talking about the wisdom or the intelligence that arises out of listening. And so here we're talking about there are four different lamas in general. There is here the word lama of the lineage and the individual. The word lama of the Sugata and the individual lama of the lineage. And then there also is the sign lama of appearances and the ultimate Lama of the Dharma nature. Now, these latter two, the sign Lama and sign Lama of appearances and the ultimate Lama of the Dharma nature, are not germane right now, so I'm not going to discuss them now. But what is important to us now is the word Lama of the lineage. These are the books that we need to study and listen. So we need to study the books, we need to listen to the instructions, and this is something that we need to do. But is just listening, is just having this intelligence of listening enough? It isn't enough. We need to actually analyze and examine it again and again. And when we do that, that's what we call the intelligence that comes out of contemplation. So we really dig into them and examine the books, and we think, what does this really mean? Is this actually helpful? What is this book about? What is it saying? And so we really examine it carefully with our logic and intelligence. And then when we develop that real strong certainty within our minds, then that is what we call the intelligence that arises out of contemplation. But does this intelligence that comes out of listening and the intelligence that comes out of contemplation, is that alone enough? It isn't. We need to really familiarize our minds with it. We need to meditate upon it in our minds. Whether we do the creation phase practices of visualizing a deity, or the samadhi meditation of Mahamudra, or whether we do the tranquility or insight meditation, or whether we're meditating upon these instructions on mind training, we need to put these into practice through our meditation and change our minds. And change our minds by eliminating everything that needs to be, all the afflictions and so forth that need to be eliminated, and by developing all of the qualities and wisdom that there is to develop, so that eventually we attain the ultimate results of liberation and liberation and omniscience. And so that is why we need to be really diligent about our listening, contemplating, and meditation. And so this is how we focus our intelligence through the three intelligences.
Tene ta te tabu ge tu song gong song sipe gu ban da bo ta silen da bo kari yo re se na kom te si don ju si don te ne tan nam do ban jor so re la ta ti se compagnie ji tem ba re la tene kom te si tu pa si na kari pheng re se na ji tang ge ngaran so la ta sen chin tang ji ta te na ne ta tan da me lu tin de ji pe re tham ji la de war ki bi nim bo yo yo re de war ki bi nim bo de kan de se na tene yen tin ji nam ba tene de pa mu gu ni ji jam ba sherap zhenju la so ba ta phun sum so ba ta tin de ki sa ban da bo de yo re la te ye pa te tan da ngan do ma jur ba kap ne de ye pa te la tene tu pa ya po ji se na tu pa ti tene jam ba phel ni ji phel tene ta te jin de sherap phel zhenju phel ne tene rikam de war ki bi nim bo te kon ne kon dum phel ki je de tene som ba sang bo dan ba tene tanda chula tepa to mugu to temba tene zhenju to temba ta tende yung yo re la teacher na tu pe khirap de so gu yo re ta te ji su ni ba som be khira de chi gu yo re la ti jun sin de kan de se ju par se tene te hi pa chom ji pheng ge re se na te chom pheng ge yo ma uni te la ju gu yo re la ta ti uni phen to chin ji re yi chi pe ge ne ji re som ne tanda chen nam ba ta ba ji na kal ba sang bo chong ne chue la ju chue la shu pa te ya te je hirap dong den go ne chue de phen to chen bo ji re som go ne ju yo re la ta te ta ba ju par se pa te som bi khira la te ne yung yo re la te yendo tene gombe khira ga kare pheng re se na te ne ta nam du par jor ta te nyam so long gom na tene ngarang ge ta tanda chitang ge ta mesete la khahi chi bo do khahi du bon ra bo yo re de ina ya te zo chewa te la tu jondo tene che nga du bo ji ri me we som bin ji tra ra bo ta tene che yapo ji ong ru se samare som be to ban ra bo ta tinde ge ta kwa sem dang lu la tene devo me ban ra bo yo re la ta thom bi chu ji nyam so long na tene sen la dewa top ne Tapena Jason Malari Pisumare, Nanchivi in Jane Rella Chain, Dan and Chimi Jensa saying Sumarella, Tambo, Jason Malari, but the Conshisari, some Netroni, Rella Gom Japni, Debaye, Tiniti Gom Japigan Devo del Carichon Yorison, Taishanayan, Jake Maguba, Top Magube, Tene Componti Top Song Sumanagi, Tinin Tartu can Devo de Togi Yore, Jitanga, Zendri Chimbo Jamo, that data of Togi Yorella. Zendri Chimbo Majun Nayon Tombi Chuji Gola Yo, there's a two song guns on the Tana, Tinitaje, Naranga, Ticaptanala, Lotes and Rabunda Yo, Sambandavoji, John the Yungrella, Tiniti, Chula, two song guns on the Calchimbre.
So, what is the reason, what is for meditating on these three types of intelligence of listening, contemplating, and meditating? What is the function of doing this? Well, as it says in the first two lines of verse 9, these increase their capacity, engage, and accomplish their purposes. And so, when we say increase their capacity, this means, all sentient beings, all humans, all sentient beings have Buddha nature present within them. So Buddha nature, what is Buddha nature? Well, it is like the seeds for all of the most excellent qualities. It's the seeds for all of our faith and love and compassion, for our devotion. It's the seed of all of our intelligence. It's the seed of all our diligence. And so this is something that is present within us, but right now it is not visible. It's hidden. But because it is there, if we do engage in listening, then we will be able to increase our loving kindness. We'll be able to increase our compassion. We'll be able to increase our intelligence and increase our diligence. And so we'll be able to really increase and develop this natural capacity of the Buddha nature that is present within us. And we'll be able to have the kind heart and the good mind. We'll be able to develop the faith and devotion. We'll be much more diligent. And so this is why it is so important for us to engage in the intelligence of listening. And then we also need to engage in the intelligence of, we also need the intelligence that comes of contemplation. And the reason for that is to engage. It's not just enough to know something. We actually need to do it. We need to engage it. We need to do it. That's what is actually helpful. And so in this way, when we engage in the Dharma, that comes out of the intelligence of contemplation. For instance, with all of you who have now entered the gate of the Dharma and practicing the Dharma, you're developing your intelligence and wisdom, you're seeing the benefits of the Dharma, and you've seen the benefits of the Dharma, and so for that reason you have engaged in Dharma practice. That comes out of the intelligence of contemplation. And so that is why we engage in we have the intelligence of contemplation in order to be able to actually engage in the Dharma practice. Now the reason why we develop the intelligence of meditation is in order to be able to accomplish our purposes. So when we do our practice and meditate, sometimes, in this human life, we sometimes are happy, sometimes we are sad. This happens over and over again. And yet, we're afraid that something bad is going to happen. We're afraid, we suspect that we might lose the good things or that things are not going to go well for us. And because of this, our minds and our bodies are not comfortable in any way. But if we are able to practice the Dharma, then through our practice we can bring ease to our minds. And so it's as Milarepa said, "Out of the fear of death I went to the mountains to meditate, and now I have seized the stronghold of deathlessness." And so first, out of a strong fear of dying and what was going to happen after that, he went to the mountains to meditate. And what was the result of his meditation? The result is that he came to attain a state where he had no need to fear death at all. He attained the ultimate state of Buddhahood through his great diligence. Even if we can't be as diligent as that, entering the gate of Dharma, if we then engage in these three intelligences of listening, contemplating, and meditating, then we'll know, okay, this is what I really need to focus my mind on. We'll understand what we need to do. And so that is why we need to engage in Dharma practice through this listening, contemplating, and meditating.
Tate hirap samji la si pichul, tate du zom to temparela, tate le tite si hipcha si na, tene chuchi chui go ne yela si pichul te temparela, tene te yon, tene chuchi nam chu ton yonda tempar hiparcha, sonchu sempa chimbo tenzu ki chuchi namba cho la, tene yugi yore, chuchi namba cho senkin te kandiri se na, tene ta tanda hyaloka chuba te, 이게 rinchi jimbaton, nindon, lodon, lembaton, chidon, katen sebaton, tegin semdon, gomba, tesembaton, gomba, o jeban deju doni, nusenom bumbo bod mese. Tate kerda, tatanda ngaranso, 이게 nrewa, tate mijibe chedula, 이게 nrewa. Tene yang cheba pulwa, ma ngelon la jimba tangwa, tene tambe chu nyemba, tene tambe chu jindo de la soba loba ta ta yi gondo de hi gai lama hibata de loba ta tene de san la zone lemba ta tene ta rang jangba ma yin ba yin la pembe ge chebda cheba ta tene rang ge katan seba ta tene de yin de di dan la semba ta tene di dan la gamba de ta de ge chu ge jawa no ba jo yo re la tene jeban de ju doni de senom bumbo ba de me 다 대답하지 제나 다 대라 선음 섬지 마자바 펜토 자쳔보 선음 생긴데야 다 지당게 주지주의 틀리데라 잖아 랑랑 팽그래라 데네 흰랑 팽게요레 디겐도 마음발라 머랍네 머랍라 펜바쳔보 용그래라 다 디체나 선음 봉보 보드메 존이자.
So this is a very brief description of the three intelligences here. And then the more detailed description comes in the description of the 10 Dharma activities. And so these are, know that this is completely contained within the 10 Dharma activities. And so the great bodhisattvas engage in these 10 Dharma activities. So what are the 10 Dharma activities? These are in starting in verse 10. Writing letters, making offerings, being generous, listening, reading, memorizing, explaining, reciting, contemplating them, and meditating. The essence of these 10 activities is an immeasurable pile of merit. And so now the first of these is to write down the words of the Dharma in order so that we do not forget them. And then also we make offerings, and then we also are being generous, so be generous down to the unfortunate and downtrodden. We listen to the meaning, we read the Lama, this is what I was just mentioning, we read the words, this is what I was just meaning when I was talking about the word Lama of the Sugatas. We also memorize them by keeping the meaning, keeping the words, holding them in our minds, or memorizing them. And then, because it's not enough just to help ourselves, we also need to help others. We engage in explaining, we recite the texts, and we contemplate the meaning, so understanding, contemplating, and then practicing on them or meditating them. And so these are the 10 different Dharma activities. And so when we do these, the essence of these 10 Dharma activities is an immeasurable pile of merit. And so we say this is an immeasurable pile of merit. Well, what do we mean by merit? Well, merit means that it's going to be beneficial. This merit is that it's beneficial for us. When we are diligent about practicing them, then this is beneficial for us. It is also beneficial for others. This is a benefit that will last from generation to generation to generation. And this is why it is an immeasurable pile of merit.
Tene ta te na ne tipa chimbuge chuche chota tu song gong song te chepartam papare ta te chepartam papa cherna karire se na mizi pe cherta ta te rang kulhu ja chimbu samba im pe cherna da chang homi ji so mizi pe cherton yin la pen do pe cher tene ta rangi po ma im ba yin la yong pen do pe cherna 마히베 마히 제르세다데 랑히니가라 펜도 자침본죠 cher나 티바침부게 단다 투선 강선세 바도 티바침부게 주제 쫄런주 발라 베 펜도 침부 용비요레
And so when we talk about the 10 Dharma activities and the 3 intelligences, why is it that the doing this in the Mahayana is so superior? It's from being superior and from being inexhaustible, from helping others and not ceasing. And so the reason it is because it is inexhaustible. It's not like the arhats who go into the state of nirvana without remainder. It is always present and inexhaustible. And it also from helping others. So it's not only helpful for ourselves, but helpful to others, and from not ceasing. By helping ourselves and others, the results of this never cease. And so in this way, the teaching, the listening, contemplating, and meditating in the 10 Dharma activities of the Mahayana are superior.
Tene ta te na ne ta jintin jisu tembe droba sena ta jisu tembe droba te kandi jire sena ta chitang nyamling zo tingen sing kamparela tingen sing kambatela kandi yopati tembe ke cheto kapndar tangpo min chenje malo bar jurba jisu tembe chu ta tambe chu la jisu tembe jubu kapsala kandi gugre sena tene hine dong longtong ni gang gu yore hine dong longtong ni de gamba te ta kandi sitenge yore sena se minwa tene se nong to go on de yin song ma yin ba je la tene hine ta tene se ne pa yin na ya se chenje lo ba la ne pa ma yin ba chenje ma lo ba hira pusum so ba de ne pra churba de longtong de jisu tembe chu yin song re.
Following that comes the practice of the compatible factors. So the compatible practice of the Mahayana. So when we do our main practice, so what is our main practice? Our main practice is samadhi. And so within that samadhi, well, what do we need is, we need the compatible factors. We need being undistracted and unmistaken are the compatible factors. And so these are generally these compatible practices are the practices of shamatha meditation and insight meditation. So we need these shamatha and insight meditation. So how do we meditate on them? Well, when our mind is undistracted, our mind is not distracted off by many thoughts, that is the shamatha or tranquility meditation. And then when our mind is resting in that way, if it's not resting not on the mistaken, but rather resting upon the unmistaken, then that is the insight. And so in this way, these are the compatible factors.
Tene ta te jeso hine to hwantong ni bo te sungwa de la tambo hine de la nomi thopong ba ke chul de sungwa de nomi thopong ba ke chul de sung de la tambo dangwa se na ta chitang ke make zup ke la inwa tene te yen da na wa da la inwa na tra la inwa che ro la inwa lu ri za la inwa la su pa ta tene ta ti ge go ngai number hipate dang dang singite ta yulan ju pa ta singite ta ti tupa hi ji number hipate tene yulan ju ne tene nong to number na so pan chu ne sirul ti ta ti la chirul ji inwa si ku yore tene te yendo nang ge inwa te tingen zen je ro nywa ta tene singwa ta ge pa chu wa te la inwa sumba teni iwa yiba te yi chi ba yi som ba ta tingen zen te la pe yi chi ba te la cha hin hin ni ta te la te on de shua ta te la hen cha ko on de shua tingen zen je no on do ne ba te ya po re te yin na yu cha hin chen bo ji ba je ge on ge teni ta te hen ba chen bo chong na te som melik ba yin be cher na teni te la se mi yin wa tene nganzen ji iwa tene ta tanda dot tawa ngajal ta che ba ta ta ji chongna ta tela tene tanda yila se bi iwa sungri wa tene chumu iwa te tene ranchi pu tendo senji ji samba ja chembo sa ne ta ma to ba ranchi pu tendo samba te chumu senji iwa te iwa number 2 lodin nam ji hi par sa se Tati iwan number 2 pompa te hini chitingen se re.
So So following that come the teachings on shamatha and insight meditation. So the first of these is shamatha, undistracted shamatha, and this is taught by way of teaching the 6 types of distractions. So the first of these is arising. So arising is when we see forms with our eyes, or when we hear sounds with our ears, when we smell scents with our noses, when we taste flavors with our tongues, or experience feelings with our body. And so this is through when we experience these through the 5 different senses, then these are distractions that are here called arising. The second is called engaging an object, and so this means when our 6th mental conscious goes out and engages an object, and we start to think about it, and so we have various different thoughts that occur. So this is what is also called the external distraction. Then there are the internal distractions. So the internal distractions are the second line, savoring, torpor, and agitation. So savoring is savoring the flavor of samadhi, and torpor and agitation. These all three together are called, these all three together are the internal distractions. The 4th type of distraction is thoughts of belief, and so what this means is that we begin to believe in our samadhi. That means we're attached and cling to our samadhi, and then we get lost with our clinging. Of course, being able to rest in samadhi is great, but being attached to it and clinging to it is not all that excellent, shall we say? And so this is what we call clinging to the attributes. Then the 5th of these, the 5th is to attention while clinging to ourself, and so this means to have clinging to a self, or to have great pride while we are meditating, and so this is a problem of our attention. So this is the distraction of attention. Then the 6th is a limited mindset. So limited mindset is where we're really only thinking about our own sake. We're not really thinking about the vast sake of all sentient beings, rather just our own sake, and that is a limited mindset. So that is the 6th, the limited, the distraction of limitations. And so the intelligent must know these 6 different distractions, and so through knowing them, then we can have good shamatha meditation.
Tene ta te ji so longtong temparela longtong te yong tangbo damji go ni ta desin number jo temparela yigi tan tong yizi tong mntro wa tong tseni ni mara ta tong lobru tong mnghong wa tong kimpa me se ta ti desin number jo de dor tempar bo ji rela ta dor tempar ti misal ga ma yu na yo woni re yendala je par so in bicherna ni te ma yu na yo disare so ba.
Following that come the teachings on insight, and the insight is taught in a summary or an overview with the verse that reads, sounds, meaning, attention, non-conceptuality, 2 characteristics, the impure and pure, the adventitious, freedom from fear, and lack of conceit. So here, these are 10 different factors. This is just an overview teaching of them, and so each of them is explained in great detail below. They're not really explained here. Since they are explained in great detail below, it's not necessary to talk about them at the moment.
Tene ta te na ne ta tanda tsinji malu ba jo ta lontong ka ta te je person ka so la tsinji malu ba jo ta tanda tin dor ting na do temba yen do tsinji malu ba jo song ni wa la tsinji malu ba jo yin na ne ta tang bo te la tene yeji yige la tsinji malu ba song ni wa la yeji yige la tsinji malu ba te nderbe cher don di cher don mandril cherdong mandi cher ten ye pa tong me pa te ten yige malo pa wo se ta ten relba te ta yige chulton tamba che ta tene te yon dripa te ta yonso thapa ta ba ta la te la tene yige te la peche che na yang ta pa che yung yo re tene mandril we cher ta mandi pa che na tene ta ti te yapo yung yo mare la tene relba tan dripa ni dan temba che na ten ye pa ta mandril bato mandribani yena ten mepate ten mepata la chenje lobarela tini teta chenje malo palan jugu pare so insade tate tene tanda jeji yigela chenje malo ba.
So these 10 factors, these are the 10 things to be unmistaken about. And so they're taught in the overview in brief, and then each of them is treated in detail below. So the first of these, they're treated in detail below, and this is how the teachings on insight are described. So the first of these is being unmistaken about the sounds of speech. And this is from being connected and familiar, from not being connected and being unfamiliar. Meaning is present or absent. This is being unmistaken about sounds. And so from being connected means that that the sounds are arranged in the right order. The sounds or the phonemes are arranged in the right order. Then being familiar means that we're using them in the way that is generally accepted, the common consensus about them. And so if we use our sounds and our words in that way, where they are connected and familiar, then that is the proper way to use speech. From not being connected and being unfamiliar, so when the words are not connected or not put in the right order, and when they are not familiar, then the communication doesn't go all that well. And so when the words are connected, or when the sounds are connected and when they are familiar, then the speech has meaning. And when they are not connected and when they are unfamiliar, then the speech is nonsense. It carries no meaning. And so when it has no meaning, that is what we call that is what is mistaken. And so here, being unmistaken about it is is understanding how them properly, using them properly. And so here, this is the first of the things that one is unmistaken about.
Tene ta tejendo jeji tanla senji malu bala on the siena ta jeji tan de zo kunta yong rup som rimba yendo lo songarela ta te on bo kunta go on the siena ni su no arjurba ne tetra yepa mainte tene tanla malu ba yedon mepa number pon sunde ni su no chi zung yordo non zembe sen ni su no arjurba te ta kunta go churela te tardo tuyo mare te tardo yepa mai ba ngorang inji tombare ta ngorang inji tombate ne tana senje malu ba imbe cherna tene yepen ta pompa sundu te la ta ni sumadu ba imbe cherna yepen ta yepa number pompa tene non zamte tene yepa imbe cherna mepa number pompa te ta te yepa ton mepen ta number pompa te ta kuntak la senje malu pare.
Next is being unmistaken about meaning. And so here, in terms what are next taught are the three natures of the imaginary, dependent, and the wholly established. So first of these is the imaginary, and this is taught in the section on being unmistaken about meaning, verse 16. Dualistic appearances are not as they seem. This is being unmistaken about meaning. Existence and non-existence have been abandoned. So we have the two of the perceived object, the dualism of the perceived object and the perceiving mind. And so these are imaginary phenomena. They are not established as they seem or as they appear. Actually, they appear, but their essences are empty. And so this is being unmistaken about the meaning. Understand this. And so this is abandoning the extremes of existence and non-existence. So because they cannot be established in a dualistic fashion, then they cannot be established as existing. And so therefore, the extreme of existence is abandoned. But because the mere appearance is not nothing, then the near appearance is something. Then it does not fall into the extreme of non-existence either. And so understanding this is being unmistaken about the imaginary phenomena.
Tene ta te yendo ta te ji ma te tanda Yewon la tsenji malo bare la. Yewon la tsenji malo bate tempe ke certo. Topa te gupa ye. Topa yizi te ne ne. Yila sepa malo ba. Nisu no jola wo se. Ta yewon te chitanga nihnong jo nda. Ta chitanga zunzi ni de madu bare. Zunzi ni de madu ba tsawa te kana te ne chungwa re se na. Tene yewon la te ne chungwa re la. Yewon la te ne chungwa yinpe cherna. Topa ti gupa ne ye, tati tanda kuntok topa ti gupa ye, topa yizi ti ne ne, topa yila sepa ti ne te, tati yung re la, yung te yila sepa malupa yung kurang ne tanda bote, ngo rang hinji tomba yinpa ti yapo che hipa te, tati chitawa yintu hipa te, nisunu jo la wo, nisunu jo te la, tini ti nelu ti chitawa yintu hipa te, yung la tsinche malupa re.
Following that is being unmistaken about attention. This is being unmistaken about the dependent. And so in order to teach this, it reads, focusing attention on the basis of the thought that is stained by that thought is the unmistaken attention on the cause of dualistic appearance. And so here the dependent is like the basis or the root of the dualistic appearances. So the external perceived object and the internal perceiving mind are not established as anything. But what is the root of all that? That is the basis. So on the thought that is stained by that thought, the second at the end of the second line refers to the imaginary. So the thoughts that are stained by the imaginary are based upon the dependent, and so that is the focusing attention on the basis of that means focusing attention on the dependent, and so focusing attention upon the dependent, we see that its essence is empty. So we understand that well, and then so in this way we see that as it is the basis for the arisal of dualistic appearances. But when we understand its nature as it is, then we see. But when we understand the nature of it as it is, then that is being unmistaken about the dependent. It is about being unmistaken about the cause of dualistic appearance.
Tati jeso, tati kunta la tsinchi malo pato, yung la tsinchi malo patene, ta yongdu la tsinchi malo parela, yongdu la tsinchi malo pati, ta dom kashi jige go ne tempare la, tene ta te yang tangpo te juma tabo topa la tsinchi malo pati, ta te tenji me tong ye pati, tenji me pa yinpa, kunta tong yung gano te tenji me pa, yung ten la madupa. Madrum na yung juma tabur thongwa ye pa te juma lasu yentende ten mantro lo pa te ta ten tsenche ma lo pa te ye don me pa mantro cher ye pa don me pa nika ma yin pa ranghin to zipa yin pe cherna teni te tanda juma tabur zipa la tsenche ma lo pa re.
And so those were verses for the being unmistaken about the imaginary and being unmistaken about the dependent. And following these come some verses about the being unmistaken about the wholly established. And so there are several different summaries of being unmistaken about the established. And first is talking about the being unmistaken about it as being illusory. And so this is the verse 18. In actuality, nothing yet something, they are asserted to be like illusions and so forth. This is unmistaken non-conceptuality, since it does not conceive of something or nothing. So in actuality, nothing yet something. So the imaginary and the dependent are not established. They are nothing. They do not exist. So they are not established, and yet the imaginary and the dependent are something. So they are asserted to be like illusions and so forth. So because they are like illusions, they are also asserted to be something. So this is the unmistaken non-conceptuality. This is being so understanding them as illusion is being unmistaken about the wholly established, since it does not conceive of something or nothing, or existing or non-existent. So this is being unmistaken about illusions.
Tene tate yendo tanda yondu rang senyi la ten senche malo pate ta to patang ji menju cher ta te nam to ge chel do majur bare la tene nam to ge chel do cher be chu tang ji ne main cham khona te ta yondu rong ngo ge senyi na njurwa ta ni yo mare la te tandang rong ge senyi la o se tandang rong ge senyi la senche malo ba yondu ge ne lu de cheta wa yendo to pa da bo ji la ko yo
Next is being unmistaken about the specific characteristics of the wholly established. And so, because no thoughts apply, so the wholly established is not within the sphere of conceptual thought. So everything that we think about, all thoughts, is merely a name only. And so this is the unmistaken specific characteristic. It's the specific characteristic of the wholly established. It is the specific characteristic of the ultimate. It is the characteristic of the ultimate itself, and this should be understood as meaning realizing the nature of the wholly established as it is.
Ta yondu rong senyi sungi yorel. Ta yondu jen senyi la senji malo ba te jitang ondo sena chuji yen na mato ban tatar chuye ma yin ti chuji yen ki ma jabe tene ngupo ji za ni yo ma re chu tong ji rang yin ki tong ba re de shir jen senyi de chuji yen ji chu tong ji la jaba te ngupo jen senyi ra bo ji re yondu ki chab yo re la yondu ti chab yo ba te ne de tar do hi ba te ta jen senyi la senji malo ba re.
So that was being unmistaken about the specific characteristics of the wholly established. And next it's being unmistaken about the general characteristic of the wholly established. And so here this is reads in verse 20, there is no phenomenon that is not within the Dharma expanse. And so there's no phenomena that is not within it. And so this means that all phenomena are pervaded by the Dharma expanse. In other words, all phenomena are naturally empty. For that reason, this is the general characteristic. So this is a general characteristic of all phenomena. So this is the general characteristic of they are all permeated by the wholly established. And that is unmistaken. So knowing that is being unmistaken about the general characteristic of the wholly established.
Ta te jisu ta tanda te tardo tembe kapsula kunta la tsinje malupa to yemu la tsinje malupa to yondu la tsinje malupa ta ten yo re la teni ta te ge tanda te topa to ma topa de ta te tsinje malupa de topa te hinta kalche wa re tsinje malupa de ma to na teni te korwa la changi yo re la ta te tsinje malupa de to ma to ge chepar temba te tsinje lo ge yela se ma pompa ton pompa le ten mara namda te yung te la malupa o tsinje lo ge yela se ba te ma pona teni number mara pare tsinje lo ge number to ba te pana number ta ba te yung te ta te ta bu ge ne su hi ba te la tsinje malupa yin.
So that's teaching being unmistaken about the imaginary, dependent, and wholly established. And then there's, the question of whether we have realized this or not. Realizing this is very important. Because if we do not realize this, then we wander within samsara. So the distinction between realizing it and not realizing it is discussed in verse 21, which reads, from not discarding or discarding incorrect attention, there are the impure and pure. That is also unmistaken about that. So here, from not discarding incorrect attention, then that is not realizing that is not realizing the nature. That is the impure. And from discarding the correct attention, that is realizing it. That is being pure. So that is also unmistaken about it. That means that through knowing that is being unmistaken about whether we have realized or the Dharma nature or not.
Ta te tabu tanda kunta yung du sung ne lu di jetawa yin de hi gu ge yo re la tene jetawa yin de hi na tene khorwa pam pa don ma hi na ta tanda ma la pa la do Yinaya, Danger on the Siena, Tela Njura Mepper, Chuji and Nelu Njura Mepper Tempatella, Chuji Yen, Ranginchi, number thoughts at Namka Yen, Nin Lobruchumati, Temo Tela Malopa was, Tachuji Yen, Ranginchi number tapa, Perna Namkatavajire, Takasin Serta, Chodan Namkala Peyoyore, Zunzini de Trubadilla, Trubati, Tin. Di chuji yin la kuy depa ji ribesi na mare lobru tu shungwa yin bechara na deta bu nelu ji rela pangja tenzo lobruwa yin batung chuji yin ji ngowo lan jirwa meba deta jetawa yin to topa te tenyo tela malupa o tsenchi malupa sikwa re.
So we need to know the nature of the imaginary dependent and the wholly established. If we know their natures, then we will be able to eliminate samsara. And if we don't know that, then we will be stuck within the impure. But next is a teaching about how actually in actuality the true meaning there is really no change. In the nature of the Dharma expanse there is really no change. And so this is taught in the next verse, verse 22. So because the Dharma expanse is pure by nature like the sky, the two arise adventitiously. This is also unmistaken about that. And so because the Dharma expanse is naturally pure. It's like the sky. So yesterday we had the examples of gold, water, and the sky. And so the two arise adventitiously. So there are all the stains. And so are they real? Are they really? Do they stick to the Dharma nature? They don't. They are adventitious. They do not. They're transient and temporary. So this is also unmistaken about that. And so this is realizing that everything that needs to be eliminated is adventitious, and the nature of the Dharma expanse is unchanging. So that is being unmistaken.
Tene ta te jesu tatanda chitang kondo damjin dor tempe kapsula tensin number 2 yo. Ta yige ta yella seba don manto wala so tensin number 2 yo. Tinani jeba ba to le chotsara. Ta goba menghang pa ta te ngon to nong da bo menjong wa ta. Joba ngajal me ba ni ti nyom de tempa la. Tene ti kamdar tempe on de siti. Chu nang tong ne gongsa ke ken ni nyemo nam da me se ta chu tong gongsa sen ke je ta chi tang ge zhenba pangja chu chi da tong gongsa ge da pangja ye ba de chu chi da pong be ge tarba to ba tong gongsa ge da dang sin pong be ge tarba to ba ta bu zang yo de la de ta bu de ne yin na ya de tong be ne lu gong de se na tene chuudong gongsa ke kani nyemong ba yung yuwa maare la nambar ta ba yung yuwa maare yungrup grangin ke nelu ti chetawa yin to na tetawa me pichar na tene khorwa la njaikin topa tang tene nyangin depa topa la nga jalwa me te ta tetawa ke nelu topa ti tsenche malo pa yin.
Now, above in the overview of insight, we had the list of the 10 different things about which we need to be unmistaken: sounds, meaning, attention, and so forth. And so, of these, we have now gone through the first 8. We've gone up to the first 8, and then the ninth, which is freedom from fear, and the 10th, which is lack of conceit, are taught now together. And so, here, as it says, since phenomena and individuals have nothing all afflicted or utterly pure, there is nothing to fear and no me. So that is being unmistaken about this. And so, since we are clinging to phenomena and individuals is something that we need to eliminate. So that self of the phenomena and individuals is something we need to abandon. And so when generally we talk about this, we say that when we abandon these, then we attain liberation, and then we are liberated from samsara and so forth. But actually, if we think about it in terms of the ultimate nature, there is nothing, there is no phenomena, there's no self, there is no nothing to eliminate. There's no difference between the all afflicted or the completely pure. In the actual nature of the wholly established, there's none of that there. And so for that reason, there is nothing to fear about samsara, and there's no me who can achieve a nirvana to be proud about. And so when we realize that nature, then that is being unmistaken.
Tene ta tring hadu chu de desam shogi la tene kasin keni je tanda che namba kangala joa da desam rabo yo segre la de la lin je pulna yapu hirondo ta de gugudo samba rabo jong sonte yina yo tuje ke de mandang ne jong ma song la de la gong da shogi la to tren tanda tene joa ge
Now that is enough for this morning. So for the last couple of days, I've been looking out there thinking that probably you all have some questions and doubts and things that are unclear, and that it would be awfully good to give you all some opportunity to ask these questions. So that's what I'd like to do, but if there's so much to talk about and so little time that I haven't had time, and so I have to beg your pardon for that. But this morning it seems like we do have a few minutes, so if there are a few questions, we have a couple minutes for some questions. Their microphone. Please come forward to the microphone.
Rinpoche, working? Is that? Oh
yeah.
Rinpoche, I'm in confusion about number 22, the adventitious nature. I don't understand the eliminating of the Dharma expanse and the sky. Or the two is, am I not getting the two?
The two, the third line, the two to rise adventitiously.
Yeah, what are the two?
Dila kazo loburo la and kazo chinjima lopara de kazo nishsa kazo jepa de na kazo de kazo shloka nishsa nipa na ro. Dila nini loburo jungwate shebe kat la ni dila. The Dharma nishsa dumba. The all line kazo na shloka nishsa nipa ro. The loburo la and chinjima lopara.
Loboro wala senjima lobori.
Oh, dela
ni nini loboro chunga.
Ni de se de kareres.
Zunzini.
Okay.
Chizunwe yodong nanzan besan la yamba del ko.
So in verse 22, the third line where it says, the two arise adventitiously, the two arises to the dualism. It arises to, it refers to the external perceived object and the internal perceiving mind.
This is about teaching. I find that I'm always overextended, and just when I think I'm as overextended as I can be, then I'm even more overextended. But I don't seem to be able to say no. So, Rinpoche, how is it that you stretch yourself enough that you can be more and more useful?
The morang chushe yura. The chushe because the morang kazogata. The tsamato ne chutu kazo and the tsamato chetugmundos. The lega mangras ne the tsamato chetugmundos. Yang dejeso emission da yang yongyure. The yang chushe the chushure che da yongyure. The yang kazo the kazo the mi mampola pemik tap surangi kazo and nupa the yaje ya kanitangure.
Te tarang te nekatana la mahamba to maju pa ina tu si yendal te ne avore.
If at that point you don't have the time or the energy, then you can put them off to a later point.
당하라서 티바 침부기 주고 온도 세나 지식 코안 탐마동 거 봐도 순거래라 두시 예 림보요.
So in the Mahayana, we talk about doing this until such time as samsara is empty. So we've got a long time, right?
One thing further about this is it's not particularly bad to be overextended, is it?
Do
When
lega
you're
mangda
teaching?
de hacham lega mangda na de kazo hachang dupo marba.
두부 말해 제브라카오.
No, it's not bad. No problem.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Rinpoche, I have a question about the dependent nature and appearances. The way I understand it, the dependent nature or appearances are the result of karma, that they are dependent on our previous karmic stream. But at the same time, I understand that appearances are and do not disappear when we reach the enlightened state, that appearances and emptiness are together. So I was just wondering if you could comment on that, because there seems to be a slight contradiction.
Dela ni shawang da nangwa gi kola ni tu yure. Da kongi go kazo nangwa, chitan nangwa. Shawang da nangwa la. Dela kongi go tarana tini shawang gi nangwa de tsun lela tini jungyure, legi drebu da du. And then data bu yana ane kazo pena ne dabe sa lepsona pena ne ane tatuki drebu topna dela ane kazo ane nawa de so gagi omare dela nawa dan tomba di nyamru yongi yore te ina yanda de dabe sa yone samba legi jude yomara de nawa de kaichine gagi omare de deni gawa mare be
다 단다 지당가 드네 레라 넘버 2 와래라 투몬 혼주르게 레동 투민 용주르지 레시 2 와래라 당가란츠 데드 뇽시 뇽야티 드네 투민 용주르지 랑기 소프 레데 랑라마이 드네 체 유르지 넘버 테 칸드레시나 투몬 혼주르지 레시 드네 센치 젠팅 레라 데네 샤르기 와래라 드네 티게 단다 타피살레 유바 덴졸라 샤르기 와래 투몬 혼주르게 레데 단지티 제 레라 때네 때네 전해진지티 데 샤르기 와라라 때네 샤르 용데 때라 틴호한테 샤르기 와레데 샤르나야 때네 나란소게 간데 트로바게 온드시나 때라 셴바이 와레 때라 셴바이 발라 때네 잠바이 와레 잠바이 발라 때네 때라 둥알타 녜모 바케게 와레 콘남바게 때라 셴바이 와마 토니 드시게 와레 셴바이 와마 잠바이 와마 때라 때네 녜모 바케게 와마 때라 때네 랭게 바사게 와마 둥할 뇽게 와마 다티기 제버인자라 드니 티에타부 트르데 센친 통지게 단도 드니 다제 제시 드니 펜베게 제들라 돈데 주지 드니데 난게 와라.
Generally, actually, we have two different types of karma. There's our particular karma that we experience, and then there's the general karma of appearances. So the particular karma of our experience is the general karma that we experience as our pleasures and pains in this life. So that's the particular karma of our experience. And then there's the general karma of appearances. And so this means just the general shared karma of everyone in the world that creates all the appearances of the world. And that also appears to those who are on the pure levels. So it does appear to them, but this is shared. It's a common general karma. So it's what creates the general appearances of the world. And so the appearances happen, but it's not like happens for us who are confused. For us who are confused, the appearances occur. We cling to them, then we grasp at them. Because we grasp at them, we experience all the afflictions and all of the suffering. But they don't have any attachment. And so, because they see it as emptiness, and so they have no attachment, they have no grasping, no afflictions, and then no actions, and then no suffering that would result from that. But they also see how it does appear to all the confused sentient beings. And so, in that way, they engage in all the activity to benefit all those confused beings.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Rinpoche, could you comment, please, on the line, existence and non-existence have been abandoned. So we neither exist nor don't exist, right? We exist in somewhere in between.
This is in the last line of verse 16.
Right.
Existence and non-existence. So we either exist or not. Can you just yeah, I was looking for the line and I missed the question.
Right. So we neither exist nor don't exist. Is that right?
Neither exists nor...
Because neither extreme exists.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Neither existence nor non-existence exist.
Dilan kaso dun la chinji lopa de kaso kunda la chinji lopa de kaso shaloka churupa na de Dharma ni sadrupa ro. Dege sik tamala
Yedam yepa
number pang shepa de pena ngaso de yebaya is ngaso mebaya ro. Dirabo gona.
Tin dabo ya kogi yorela yepa number bomba de takunda ke chutam ji yepa mai ba. Meba number bomba de tini nutini maharawayo mai ba ngaranso. Trubati yore besina trud de yore. Trubati yore de na trubati tietar de yomare sonde tati. Titendo coins.
That's right. Basically, when we say that that existence has been abandoned, this means that we have abandoned the imaginary. We have eliminated the imaginary. And saying that non-existent has been abandoned, this means that things still appear. It doesn't stop appearances. Appearances still occur. But because we're confused, we are confused and they appear to us. And so, since we are confused, they do not appear as they seem to us. Or they are not as they seem. What am I trying to say? They are not actually as they seem to appear.
Is there no such thing as non-existence?
Mepa di teni mepa rela, te tabu maimba. Yepa number pong, mepa number pong.
Yeah. So non-existence is just nothingness, and it's not like that at all. So it's not nothing, and it's not something. It's not existent, not non-existent.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, Rinpoche, thank you for teaching, and I have two questions. One's a Dharma question and one's a culture question. So in the knowledge of the compound and non-compound, which is the end of chapter 3, it's similar to the end of the section that was just taught about there's no self to be liberated. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what's liberated. What's liberated?
What's liberated?
Not what does liberation mean, but what gets liberated, or is it just already there and covered up? If there's no self to be liberated, then why are we talking about liberation?
Chitang de la ro ane penane leo sumbagi tsik tama de sonalane ane ducheda dumacheda kepa de dan derma chipdunya ba de tang ane ngaso tandagi shubagi kaz ane tapa me ba dang ngaja me ba la kazo chinjima lopa ni dini dabo de tenan kazo ane kazo tarba checking gi dabo ganza dabo de ngone chena de yomare de dabo da tang ganza de ane tarba token ganza de mena ne tarba token de sure karit
tarba token ge da me sinkin de kandi jiresena da tipurunzamba da do rabo tinde ji yore besena yomare la kari yore sena naranso konto tempa tardo pumbonga komjobji tin tanda mambo je inzomne Tini teya tusi la takwa yo mare. Koran sarba cheki ndepa landro tata wala ne maungpa de tata we salandro tata wala ndepa salandro. Koran chu papa na yindro ge yo la. Tini do senki cheki tini tenda tapena tanda tusi ndabu je yena. Tini chitong guja danchu tengu kap nga ta tanda ni tong chog nga ni dagi war bisin dagi omar lupon dagi omar sen dagi omar kanga thate pare ni tig chana do yo mare do tin jur la tin jur sare re te yina ti jen rabote rimba jendul yo ar bisin yo ar la tini ti ngaranso lomla tsena lomla tsenkin ti rimji ti jen rabote tini sani tarbatobyo.
So when we say that ultimately there is no self that attains liberation, what that is said to, because what that actually means is there some sort of a singular, solid, real self that attains liberation? There isn't. So then what is it that attains liberation? Well, as we've talked about, there are the 5 aggregates, the 18 elements, and so forth. There are all these different things that are put together, and they're not permanent. In terms of time, they're not permanent. They're changing from moment to moment to moment. Each moment there's a new one, then a new one, then a new one. And so there's the past one. There's the one that's in the present that goes into the past, the one that's in the future that comes into the present and goes to the past. And so there's this succession that goes like the water in a river flowing downstream. And so when we say there's a self, then if we take an example of it, there was the me from 1979, and there is the me of 2010. And so if we look at these two me's, are they the same? No, they're not. The body is separate. The body is different. The mind is different. They're not at all the same. So there's no self that's the same there. They've changed. It's because it's transient and always changing and going from time. So it's always transient. But what there is a continuum. So is that continuum present? The continuum is present. And because that continuum is present, then we can make efforts on the path, learn what we need to learn, and then gradually that continuum will come to attain liberation.
Tene tandana gengo shajakwa je yore besene je yomare la pugu chunchu je yore tipugu chunchu sunchu kitongo je sunchu sosanga ka te tandani tikpar besene tikpa mare sa sosore do je yore besene yomare te yina yo jen tikpa la sundu tela tini te ngaran jenda botige ne la tengi yore la tini jewa ta hyoa tarba topa tong korwalan chamba kanga ta tindisi jenla tindi dogi yore.
So like in 1933, I was born in 1933. And when I was born in 1933, was I a fat, old, white-haired guy like I am now? No, I was a little baby. I was cute. So, that cute little baby from 1933 and the old guy now, are they the same? They're not. There's no self that is the same. But there is the continuum that goes from one to another, and so that's the continuum that goes from death to rebirth to death, and that is the continuum that can attain. And it's because of that continuum that we can attain liberation.
Thank you. And my second question pertains to the path and the description of progress on the path where we have entering, accumulation, joining, seeing, meditation. And like in your commentary, or in Karma Chopel's commentary yesterday, that seeing is brief, or a moment. And then this meditation part happens for a while. I guess culturally, I'm curious about the decorum around the description of the experience, and that in my experience in the meditation community for 20 years or something, I've never had a conversation with someone that said, I have achieved the stage of seeing or something. And we say joining, we have this warmth, and then we have peak, like that. So I'm wondering, like, you know, culturally in the monastery, seem more likely to run into somebody that had achieved some, you know, stage of the path. And I'm wondering if they talk about it. You know, they say like, hey, I achieved seeing for a moment, you know, the other night, and now I'm on to meditation, and so can I have a better room or, you know, something? And like, it would be great also to meet some people. Like, I think the instruction yesterday, if we want to be inspired on the path, to read about Marpa, Milarepa, is very useful, and I enjoy reading about the lives of the gurus, except that they're alive from so long ago, that contemporary models, and surely Rinpoche is an incredible model, and the rest of the monastics that I meet that are genuinely joyful.
Chitande Tuadero, and also the Chitan Salam ki Namsha Yure, the Salam ki Namsha Nana Kaza Chitande make Kashi de Ma Rinpoche de Ma drog Yure, the Penang Shachotla and Kazo Gombanana and Mikashe the Pechet and the Topodabo token Rabo Yure, Pena Mikashe Tonan Token Rabo. Yesterday, Ten Pena Yana Jolamna you can Dawoda. The Michiki Naso Gombanana Dawoda. Kasanga Tolan top sound, I was second, I was your bed. Yana Kasan Tolan top sound, Ningalanda shot Yabuchi Cheroche, Dawlakin, Drawina, Yana, and cousin did Kakala did double Lakin Dawina, Kasan Kakala did double Michi double Tosona. De deba da mugupe la big penguris kazan rumbuji de la mille namtara da marbe namtara de so jena ane pependo chempo yore sonore de ina de so midis da pe yurimbo ngena ne kazo mato tandagi mi mare tandai kazo rumbuji de kazo pena pe pemse yabo yore de ina de dawo mishinda dawo kanena yorbe dawo
de la ngaransu lusola Kanti yore sena, tate nyom topa tenzo mambu, jenkin, zendru, zongkin, gongkin, yore besene yore. Yore de yinaya tela nyom topa cheprachin, jila cheke hojire. Jila cheke yore de yinayo, nyom topa rangla chepa te, tene, kumagi chakana yin beguri sinki yore. Nga topa cheprachin chechong, sene, sole shira sheke yomare. Tene topa chepa chinchena ya te be sola mala pa che tene nyamchung rabo che chene yugi yore la tene nga thongla to ti se ki yobare tene thongla thong ki yojire te yena nga thongla to ti nga jipari ti se ki yobare tene te kaingo to ayeba
Chite kachitan de rabo mi yuna ane topa yoken gi me de topa yoken yuna tene deba kesa yudrao
deba kesa tene kali ta tanda lama chepa chintenzo rimbe njalna tene dangwa hyona tene ti nga thongla to ti se la gu mare tene lam chepa chinten te na dei chul mare deba chepa chinchen
So in our tradition, there are a lot of people who've developed experience and realization. So, you know, we've got a lot of people, they have been diligent, they've worked on the path, and so do they get results from it? Yes, they have. But, you know, of course we have a lot of people with experience in the realization, but when you develop that realization and experience within yourself, then it's like you say, it's like hiding a jewel from the thief. You keep it away. It's like you hide it away. It's not like you show it. And so there's no one who says, I've attained realization. And so, I've attained the path of seeing. No one says that. You know, you hide it and you go around without telling one very modestly that way. So there's no one who says, I've attained the path of seeing. Of course, yes, there are, of course, many who have attained these great states, but we generally don't say that. But if you want someone whom you can have a lot of faith and devotion for, then if you meet some of the great lamas and then you receive instructions from them, the spiritual instructions that really show you the true path, then there's no need for them to say, I've attained the path of seeing, because they're teaching you, they're showing you the perfect path.
Thank you, Lam.
First, this is beautiful. I was just wondering if it's possible that there's a point when intelligence or education becomes a detriment on the path, and an impediment to experiencing actuality. And if so, how do we compensate or deal with that?
Dela kaso tupa dan sambe shirap trabo ne lojo mambo che dan yuntu mambo ke digi kaso mambo ne lamla tsimbe kaso bachi cha sigurbe bachi trabo cha sigurbe ne bachi cha sisona ne digi nyembo kaina nyembo gan tengone
바치 차세그래 가르디세나 때지 ngajalraboche anda tene ngajalraboche nga thupa chemboyin nga sambaya boyin samba ngajalraboche segre ngajalraboche na tene yin la thodo ndabo yung segre tene sena parchi yung segre de yinaya tene tela tanda 디 님보라 가리고 그랬으나 다티 ngajalte pangjayin bata tene 다 텐데 녀몬버게 견다고 텐데 야보 희나 tene 다티 메산사이 야보시나 tene 디게 ngajal게 짠데 빵도 그래봐.
It's quite possible that this could become a problem on the path. And the point when it becomes a problem is when you start getting full of yourself and prideful. I'm educated. I have done a lot of study. I have done a lot of contemplation. And so then when you start getting prideful like that, then you can start getting jealous of other people. So it's possible that all of the afflictions can occur. So this can happen. And so the remedy for this is to study about pride being something that needs to be eliminated. Study that we need to give, that all of the afflictions are false. And so if we understand that, then we have to realize that this sort of pride and that sort of jealousy are things that we need to give up.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for your teaching. I had a question about verse 17, and I'm afraid my question is going to be about as confused as I am about this.
Which chapter?
This is on the last one that we read about the being unmistaken about attention. It says focusing attention on the basis of the thought that is stained by that thought is the unmistaken attention on the cause of dualistic appearance. I'm not sure how to apply this in meditation. I mean, how do I focus my attention on the basis of a thought that is stained by that thought? I think what you said was to focus attention on the dependent as the basis of the arisal of dualistic appearance. I'm a little confused. So does that mean that you focus your attention on mere awareness? As a focus in your, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to actually practice with this.
Dharma nishsa drupanala de shloka chupdumbara de kazo yila chepela la chinjima lopara de la tumba
Sholo Chudimba.
and the topa de grepa topa ichi de ne dila chepa de kazo topa de kazo ne la yila chepa de kane chegres ngune gom nyam slambe chepa kazo de kare chegres kaisen rubege de jashiname kazo de la ne ane kazo degi ne la ane shemon ngudin nang de kazo de nizingi nawa gi ne la sheres de gom nyamsalambe kaso de la yile cheba kande gyagres de ripatsamla ne kaso la
Te Chitange Yonga Noa te Hargi Yore. Hargi Yore de Yonga Noa taking ranking de Tene Demba Yomare, Demba Yomare. Taperna Namkalan Jahavan Rabuji, Namkalan Jahagi Yore, Jadudun Rabu, Upu Jes to Bayore in Yomarela. Pete yendo young no te tangenji leda compa pojog topti shargi yuare the ina te tar to trupa yomarela te tar to trupa mepate yonduk neta yondo yondu ni can derbate ta tar to imbichana yonduk neta te gom jutela tene young no te ranking tomba imbal to yorva.
So the dependent appearances do appear, but by their nature, are they true like that? They aren't true as that. They are like rainbows that appear in the sky. With a rainbow in the sky, is there some solid thing? Is there some substantially existent thing that is the rainbow? There is not. And so in the same way with the appearances of with dependent appearances, they come out of the power of karma and are imprints, but they are not as they seem to be. And so that nature of them being empty in that way is the wholly established. This is the connection between the dependent and the wholly established. So when you look at the nature of when you look at and realize the nature of the dependent, then you also naturally also realize the nature of the wholly established.
We've all heard the problem that the misperception that the rope is a snake.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that there may be an even more fundamental fear, and that's that the rope is not a snake. Because ego propagates its eternal, endless scenarios of basically phony fear on this fundamental hallucination. So at a deeper level, I think we're more terrified that the rope is not a snake. Is there anything to that?
Dila kazo drul de tapala trubayina de kazo pedabo shayres. De jitan de karilayres nangaso drula de jita kegyores. In konge samchana chijinangaso drul de tapa yimbala kazo de samge jita me ngaso drul de kazo tapa de drul mayimbala ne jita chempo kegyores kaso ngaso trupa pe mampo yores.
Tapa drum.
Tapa de trula drula and trupe kapsulane drulgi jikta yores. Kogi samchala ne de tapa de drul mayimbala ne jita chempo yores. Kaso jita ngaso dungi nelu la kaso dodo mampo dodo mambo doda che yores. De la pe zimba chempo yores. De dabo marbe.
Tatanda digi tapala drudun trubi pete je dan support rabota gong ne rabota chuni ge dan rabu maimpa chuni ge dan unil samna tapala tapar hina yo de trubare la tini de la tini zamba chimba yore de ina ti tapala drudun trubi pe yogo bi junsin de candidate pu chu je dollar to tini de tapa la dur re sam tini ngune tina dur yo marela tini takpa la hina ta koran ta tandanga dur so jagwe re sam jito ati yal dur la ta te la pe yo parwa
this example of confusing a rope for a snake is not one with a deep meaning. It's not one that's got real points for meditation. It's not really talking about the actual Dharma nature. Because actually, if we think about it in the way things really are, we think of a rope being a rope, but it cannot be established as that. And so thinking of it in that way is in itself confusion. So there's a lot of fixation and confusion there. So, well, what is the example then? Well, the example is like you've got a little kid, and the kid is afraid of snakes. And the kid sees a rope and thinks of it as being a snake, and then is really afraid that it's going to get bit. And so in order to tell the little kid that, you don't need to be afraid, in order that the kid not be afraid, you tell them so that they know. When they're afraid that when they know that it's just a rope, then they're no longer afraid of being bitten. And so that's how we should understand that example.
One last, I'm not sure I expressed myself very well. Let's say that we hear that when the Buddha first turned, the second turning, of the Prajnaparamita, that a lot of arhats had heart attacks and fell dead on the spot. It's that kind of fear that I'm suspecting may be more fundamental than the more petty fears that.
De la Chisina Conde Tua di Yapotamason, Pena de la ne Kolobabe de Tambor Kore Kasura, de Sheriki Paro Chimbe Dosumbe Kaso, de Dajamo Mambo Kazo and Kazo Tachung Kazo Shivre Stabo, Lojidu, Kazo Tatne, and Shires, Deda Wajita Marbes, and Deda Wajita Yures, and de Kazo Jita Naso Jita Soda, Deda de Marbe. Maramare de Kazo, Mune de Neluki den de Yanda Perton, la Jita Tavo, inside it.
Neluki ten Tomala Jita Jig Marika. Jita Kana Jig Yorisena, Tanda Dajam Tatanda Nintu Tenzo, Tony Gitan Mahi, PJ.
When the arhats died at that point, I don't think that was out of fear of the actual meaning of the actual nature. Rather, it was these were great arhats, listener arhats, but they didn't know emptiness, and because of it, they thought they were going to fall from some state or something. So that's the sort of fear I think they had.
Shabe